Welcome to the Chris Spangle Show. Thanks so much for joining me. That was a horrible intro. Why did you do that? I hated that. I should not have done that one. I'm so sorry. I ruined the beginning of the show. Hopefully it's uphill from here, but you never know. Today we're going to talk a lot about flip-flopping. Talk a little bit about... what else are we going to talk about? A lot about Kamala Harris, but a little bit about Trump. Let's start with Trump, okay? Because he made a decision yesterday that I think should terrify conservatives. I don't understand it at all. Donald Trump plans to appoint Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard as honorary co-chairs of his transition team. Okay, so who's Donald Trump? The Republican nominee for president, who 10 years ago was a Democrat, pro-choice, pro-choice Democrat. Robert Kennedy Jr. ran in the Democratic primary this year, and Tulsi Gabbard, a Democratic congresswoman. This is, I think, the problem with the modern Republican Party. They don't have any understanding of fundamental principles of limited government. My podcast partner over at the Pat Down, Dion, said, what are conservatives actually conserving? And I think you have to ask that question. What are they conserving? Because the traditional notion of a conservative in America is that you're conserving the natural rights tradition, that you're conserving the tradition of a limited government, of federalism, of protecting free markets and spontaneous order. You're not conserving right-wing culture, whatever that may be, or a Christian culture, whatever that may be. But that's really kind of where it's now. You're conserving a 50s notion of America as opposed to the true principles of the founding. To be a Republican in good standing in 2024 means that you are anti-left. And anti-left does not necessarily mean libertarian. Anti-left does not mean conservative. So when you say you're putting two Democrats in charge of your transition team, it tells me that you don't understand what the transition team does, how important that role and the roles they fill out are, and that the people you chose to fill out the positions of the administrative state under your administration don't understand conservative principles of limited government. But we know this about Donald Trump. Here's a guy who put Fauci in charge of the pandemic response. Republicans hate Fauci, but Donald Trump put him in charge. They hate most of what the CDC wanted him to do. He appointed the CDC director. I think his name is Redford. He appointed the head of the FDA. He gave Fauci the platform to do what he needed to do and the CDC to do it. He's the one who passed 2 stimulus bills and wrote the third that caused our inflation. Donald Trump fundamentally does not have core beliefs, and therefore he produces all kinds of bad ideas that grow the size of government. But we know this. We saw him as president. It's just amazing to me how many people have forgotten it over the last 4 years because he's anti-left. They hate the left because of COVID, but the man who architected all of the COVID response that they hate is their choice for president. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't get it. Robert Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard supported the Green New Deal. They're both pro-life. I mean, these are I think you can be a pro-choice Republican. I don't think you can be a pro-Green New Deal Republican or Libertarian because that's like a $30 trillion boondoggle meant to tax us so we stop climate change, even though China is responsible for most of releasing carbon into the air. So what is the transition team? The transition team are the people that go in and decide who's going to be in the cabinet, who's going to fill out director positions across the bureaucracy, the administrative state. And like the rap on Trump is that those positions are going to be filled out by loyalists. But he just picked two people who are not loyal to their own party. And like, I'm not against this necessarily, but I think if you were Donald Trump and you value loyalty more than anything else, which is why you hate Mike Pence because he put his loyalty to the American people over his loyalty to Trump, you're picking two people who just for political expedience and appearances on right-wing podcasts, in the case of Tulsi Gabbard, and an endorsement of you because you just hate Kamala Harris and the Democrats, you have a grudge. Like, that's the person you're going to pick for your transition team? It makes no sense. He's just going to fire them anyways. He put Chris Christie in charge of the last transition. Christie started appointing reasonable people who understood how their departments functioned, and he got mad at him. Or I think there was like a personal beef between them. It wasn't even the job he was doing, and so he put Pence in charge of it. And Pence picked a lot of very conservative people because of being Mike Pence. And so you got out of the first couple of years a lot of solid, conservative-leaning Republican, traditional Republican legislation that Mitch McConnell helped shepherd, that his team, they would ignore a lot of Trump's bad ideas. They kind of employed what happened with Nixon back in the day. Nixon would get drunk at night and call up Haldeman and Ehrlichman and say, I want you to nuke the Russians. And they'd call each other and go, did you just get that call? And they'd say, yeah. All right, well, if he brings it up again, then we'll do it. And most times he didn't because he was drunk and forgot what he was doing. But you had a lot of people in the first administration who, like, he'd come up with the idea of, like, buying Greenland, and they go, all right, well, just if he brings this up again, then we'll figure out what we need to do. You know, but when he said, let's, Federalist Society, appoint judges. All right, sweet, we'll do it. This time, the rap is that he's going to pick on loyalty, and he's going to be in charge. I mean, the problem with 2020 and why he lost is that he was in charge of that campaign and its messaging. He won in 2016 because Kellyanne Conway and Steve Bannon were in charge of the campaign and the messaging. And they largely froze him out of decision-making and said, no, you're doing it this way. But by 2020, he's president, I'm in charge, and we're going to do it my way, and that's why he lost. That's why he passed 2.5 stimulus bills. I mean, there is an article, you can Google search this. Donald Trump was mad at Nancy Pelosi because the third stimulus bill was not big enough. Donald Trump is the person who shut the economy down, which suppressed supply, and sent everybody thousands of dollars in checks, which increased demand. It's basic economics. Republicans and Democrats don't understand the basic theory of supply and demand, especially this Republican president. So this guy just doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, it's very clear. And if he's president again, he will show this level of incompetence as president. But the other option is not any better. She doesn't know what she believes, and she changes her mind every 5 minutes. She says whatever she needs to do to get elected. And I don't know what's going on, but it does remind me, let's travel back in time. I wish I had some traveling back in time music, but I don't. Well, let's see. Maybe, that's like bed music, and we'll have to find some like fun back in time music. I want to play this.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Serious crap.
All right, that was the wrong one. I meant to play this.
The company store, the paradigm of absolute control.
Which is real words from Alex Jones set to a folk theme.
To be in nature and be natural. And this is where we find the source that God made to transcend the New World Order. And that's why they want to try to keep us out of it.
All right, this will get stuck in my head. I mean, it's always stuck in my head. I've been singing this since I put it on the board. But let's travel back into time to 2004 and go to John Kerry, who ran against George Bush, an incredibly unpopular president thanks to the war in Iraq and a poor economy and a conservative who didn't have any conservative principles. And who did the Democrats pick? Did they go with Bill Clinton, who took Reagan's messaging and said, let's go back to hope?
I was born in a little town called Hope, Arkansas, 3 months after my father died. I remember that old two-story house where I lived with my grandparents. They had very limited incomes. It was in 1963 that I went to Washington and met President Kennedy at the Boys Nation program. And I remember just thinking what an incredible country this was, that somebody like me, had no money or anything, would be given the opportunity to meet the president. That's when I decided that I could really do public service because I cared so much about people. I worked my way through law school with part-time jobs, anything I could find. And after I graduated, I really didn't care about making a lot of money. I just wanted to go home and see if I could make a difference. We've worked hard in education and healthcare to create jobs, and we've made real progress. Now it's exhilarating to me to think that as president, I could help to change all our people's lives for the better and bring hope back to the American dream.
Such a good campaign ad. Bill Clinton was such a good politician. I mean, he was a Southern Democrat who just embraced America and said, this is awesome, right? And, he just was believable. But, the Lewinsky thing kind of killed it, and then he had Al Gore. I mean, he would have won a third term. I mean, even through the Lewinsky stuff, you look at his approval rating when he left, it was like in the 60s. And instead of kind of continuing on that embracing of the Southern Democrat who just cares about the American people, I feel your pain. Where we're going to adopt some conservative ideas and just understand that this country is a little center-right because of just the propagandistic view of how we indoctrinate our kids about patriotism and all these different messages. No, in 2004, they went with John Kerry, which I think was a very foundational race for the last 20 years, really, like how the public sees Democrats. And it gets at kind of what Kamala Harris is running against. Because you had Bill Clinton in that era who was this seen as like a centrist who would work with Republicans to get things done for the American people. And then you went with John Kerry, this coastal elite who's kind of, he's rich because his wife is rich, so he's not a real man. He's, says he's all about his service, but there's all this questions about his service in Vietnam. And during Vietnam, he was a soldier against the war, testifying, part of the anti-war movement. And so therefore he was seen as non-patriotic. He's a rich guy who talks about fighting for the little guy, but really likes his tax loopholes. Fundamentally doesn't know what he believes because he's a flip-flopper. Remember the flip-flops at the Republican convention in that year? Maybe you don't because I'm not normal. And they were able to run campaign ads like this.
There's nothing wrong with making a decision and then changing your mind. But if you never commit to what you believe in, who will ever commit to you? John Kerry has changed his mind on all these important issues. Now, there's nothing wrong with a little indecision, as long as your job doesn't involve any responsibility. John Kerry has changed his mind time and time again. If you thought you could trust him, you might want to change your mind too. ClubForGrowth.net is responsible for the content of this advertising.
And so they go through, what you can't see in there is, because you're listening to it, is John Kerry at the debate with his arms waving side to side and him say, it's like the Patriot Act and terrorism in Iraq and all these different issues that he'd flip-flopped on. Because the way that they shaped Kerry was that he was an unpatriotic, un-American, liberal coastal elite who didn't really understand what he believed. He just wanted power. He wanted to be president. And I think you see a lot of that in the conservative. I think it's interesting to see, some of that stuck to Barack Obama, but it didn't really work because Barack Obama had this poor upbringing. He had this unique background. The attacks from the right were a lot more racial on Barack Obama and a lot more, You didn't really get, I mean, maybe you had people call John Kerry a communist, but nobody actually really believed that. And I don't know that they totally believe that about Kamala Harris or Barack Obama, but you had a lot more of he's a community organizer, which is kind of code. You have he's a communist, he's a socialist, all this stuff. And you see both of these attacks on Kamala Harris, right? She's a liberal coastal elite, out of touch, unpatriotic flip-flopper who also is a communist who is playing racial politics, right? Like the right hasn't really developed new talking points or strategies, and maybe it's just been effective so they don't need to, but I don't know that that's working anymore. But the problem for Mitt Romney and for John Kerry and for Kamala Harris is that they're flip-floppers, right? You know, Mitt Romney took one position as governor of Massachusetts, and then when he ran for president in 2012 and 2008, took other positions that were opposite, that were more conservative. And it's why he didn't connect in 2008. In 2012, he was kind of the only decent option that Republicans had in that race, minus, I mean, we think Ron Paul, but the modern Republican Party didn't look at it that way, obviously. I want to give Harris some grace on changing her mind on several issues, because she has like been the nominee for 30 days, so it's not like she sat there and spent a year and a half getting her campaign ready, getting people in gear, getting the messaging set. It's all kind of come fast. But you have been vice president. And it's not like every vice president ever hasn't sat there and gone, if I were president, what would I do? Right? I think she just hasn't done that. Like, she hasn't thought about what she believes on big issues like border walls and Medicare for all, and, you know, some the different things that she's changed her mind on. Right? So the list. Hold on. I had the list here. She was for fracking. Now she does. Now she's not. She was for the Green New Deal. Now she's not. No, you know, she was for a more open border policy. Now she's not. Mandatory gun buybacks. Now she's not. Socialized healthcare. Not for that now. And it's not like she's out there having interviews saying, you know, I felt this way about fracking when I ran for president in 2020. And I feel differently now because of these reasons. She's just having campaign aides get bombarded with questions about policy points, and these unnamed campaign aides then go, yeah, no, she's not for fracking anymore. Which is an incredibly important issue to the economy of Pennsylvania, a swing state. So let's just go back and listen to some of these audio clips of what she believed in 2020 and what she was talking about back then. So let's play a clip from a town hall with Kamala Harris in 2020. This is courtesy of CNN.
Will you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking your first day in office, adding the United States to the list of countries who have banned this devastating practice?
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yeah.
All right, pretty straightforward, right? Harris will not ban fracking, according to campaign officials back in late July.
I think that what this polling shift signifies...
Sorry, I'm pulling up the article in a little something. So yeah, she said she'd ban fracking, and now she's against it. Okay, let's go to Medicare for All.
You support the Medicare for All bill, I think, initially...
Correct. You don't have to go through the process of going through an insurance company, having them give you approval, going through the paperwork, all of the delay that may require. Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on. I want to give credit to Bernie. Take credit, Bernie. You know, you brought us this far in Medicare for All. I support Medicare for All. I always have, but I wanted to make the plan better, which I did. So under my Medicare for All plan, People have the choice of a private plan or a public plan because that's what people want.
Okay, apparently not what they want because she's changed her mind. Those were from 2019 when she was running for president last time. Let's go here in 2019 what she said at a gun safety forum on MSNBC about the assault rifle buyback.
What would you do about the millions of, specifically, assault weapons that are already in circulation? What do you do about those?
Well, there are approximately 5 million, to your point, Craig. We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program. It's got to be smart. We got to do it the right way. But there are 5 million at least, some estimate as many as 10 million. And we're going to have smart public policy that's about taking those off the streets, but doing it in the right way.
Mandatory gun buyback program is they determine what guns are illegal and they're going to give you money for your property. Think of it as gun eminent domain. You don't have a choice to give up your home, but we'll pay you for it. And it'll be fair market value, which is always like, what would the fair market value of an illegal gun be? No taxes on tips. She also has said she supported measures that allowed the IRS to track and tax workers' tips and cast a tie-breaking vote in 2022 to pass legislation that increased IRS funding for this exact purpose. Now she has taken the Trump idea, which was originally, I think, a Ron Paul idea, and disagrees with it. Immigration and the border. So let's hear what she had to say back in 2020's election cycle about this. This is from a debate.
The signs at the rally you just held were people standing there saying, abolish ICE.
Yeah.
Is that a position that you agree with?
Listen, I think there's no question that we've got to critically re-examine ICE and its role and the way that it is being administered and the work it is doing. And we need to probably think about starting from scratch. Not in favor of decriminalizing or not having consequence for it. We have to keep, let me just be very clear. We have to have a secure border. But I am in favor of saying that we're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct. That is correct.
So you support giving universal health care, Medicare for all, to people who are in this country illegally?
Let me just be very clear about this. I am opposed to any policy that would deny in our country any human being from access to public safety, public education, or public health, period. Immediately on January 20th of 2021, I will, first of all, we cannot forget our DACA recipients, and so I'm going to start there. I will immediately, by executive action, reinstate DACA status and DACA protection to those young people. I will further extend protection for deferral of deportation for their parents and for veterans who we have so many who are undocumented and have served our country and fought for our democracy. I will also immediately put in place a meaningful process for reviewing the cases for asylum. I will release children from cages. I will get rid of the private detention centers. And I will ensure that this microphone that the President of the United States holds in her hand is used in a way that is about reflecting the values of our country.
Listening to a lot of that I didn't disagree with, but I don't know if she agrees with it or not, based on a recent campaign a recent campaign ad for Harris said, Kamala Harris has spent decades fighting violent crime. As a border state prosecutor, she took on drug cartels and jailed gang members for smuggling weapons and drugs across the border. As vice president, she backed the toughest border control bill in decades. And as president, she will hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking. So not starting from scratch on the CPB, but we just heard a lot of things that, like they're being vague about what she actually believes on some of that stuff. So at one point, she wrote in a lawsuit, the bail system at issue here does not categorically deny bail to any group of individuals. Harris joined Rand Paul in 2017 to introduce legislation to push for changes and replacement of the cash bail system. Excessive bail disproportionately harms people from low-income communities and communities of color. Harris and Paul wrote in an op-ed, bail is supposed to ensure that the accused appear at trial and don't commit other offenses in the meantime. She hasn't said one way or the other. She still agrees on that, right? And then, of course, we all know about marijuana, right? She put 100, 1,500, 1,900 people in jail for marijuana while laughing as she smoked marijuana, the famous Tulsi Gabbard clip, and now she wants to decriminalize it. Right, that's a move in the direction of liberty, right? Some of these things are good, some of these things are bad from a libertarian point of view, but can you really trust where her positions lie? Right? What does she actually believe? How did she evolve on things like fracking? Right? How did she evolve on Medicare for all? Did she? Is she lying then? Is she lying now? To win an election, like she in the Democratic primary, placating Democrats by telling them what they wanted to hear, and now she's telling the country? Is this like the classic political move of be a liberal or conservative hardcore in the primary and then move to the center positions? What's going on here? So we are owed, as the people hiring a president of the United States, answers on these questions. And the problem is that her running mate doesn't really know. So there was this amazing, confusing Politico playbook rundown of why she's not doing interviews, how she's going to do an interview, what her decisions are on it, blah, 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 blah. And there's one section in here that is crazy to me. One of the issues that Harris World is currently working to address is how to deploy running mate Tim Walz in the media. The danger in sending him out to do big solo interviews is that he might not have full command of where Harris is on every issue. As someone who pointed out to us last night, Harris talks about the, quote, opportunity economy, but if Walz were asked to define it, would he know how? Like, you're running to have control over our lives, and your running mate doesn't know where you stand on these big positions? He can't articulate your vision? Do you have a vision? Or are we just running on joy vibes and, general directions here? Right? At least on the Trump side, I know Trump doesn't want to embrace the Project 2025 stuff, but there's a lot in there that Donald Trump and Republicans have been pushing for decades. There's a lot of that in there that is maybe a little unfair to what Trump believes, but there's a lot of it that Trump actually believes and that they'd actually do. Because Donald Trump doesn't want to be president so he can push policy. Donald Trump lets everybody come to the table and then says, yeah, okay, that sounds good. Go ahead and try it. All I care about is immigration and making sure I don't go to prison. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about tax cuts or unrealized capital gains taxes or anything other than sending immigrants who have been here legally for 25 years back to their country because they made a minor mistake on their application forms. Like, that's what moves him. Immigration is what moves him. And Kamala Harris now takes the Trump 2016 position on immigration. How did she get there? Does anybody know? I mean, we've watched Trump's evolution into something far darker on immigration. So we've seen that evolution. We know where that comes from. It's Stephen Miller. But, yeah, this is a crazy election cycle. And the media is just so in the bag. And I'm not surprised. They did it with Bush. They did it with anybody that ran against Obama. Politico yesterday, it's like the New York Times. We talked about it yesterday. Republicans are pushing for honesty from Tim Walz. Not like if J.D. Vance had lied as much as Tim Walz lies about his record, there would be in the New York Times like graphics, and there'd be social posts, and it'd be a big investigation with 5 people on the byline, and then they do an article or a video explaining how they did the reporting on what a liar J.D. Vance is. No mention really of the Chamber of Commerce award that he lied about, or, his military record that's murky, or some of these things that kind of show that Tim Walz fudges who he is and what he's done in order to look better. He does exactly the same thing as Donald Trump. He's as dishonest at his core as Donald Trump in how he lies. It's just that Donald Trump does not accept guardrails. Tim Walz accepts guardrails and social correction, right? Donald Trump doesn't have that. But I have no doubt that if Tim Walz didn't get corrected and checked, that he would be just as bad as Donald Trump. So, Politico yesterday, our corrupt leadership, quote, Vance tries to tether Harris to Biden during Michigan rally. And then the X fact check is, Kamala Harris is currently serving as vice president of the Biden-Harris administration, a role which she was sworn into in 2021. Mary Catherine Ham tweeted this out. I spotted the tether, and it's a whitehouse.gov article of the Biden-Harris administration where there's a hyphen between Biden-Harris. Everything that, like, when they release those hostages from Russia, Kamala's there next to Biden getting off the plane. Like, do you think you can just fool the American people that you're not vice president? Like, it's just insulting to our intelligence to think that you have no power. I mean, you don't have a lot of responsibility, but you do have power and influence. You may not have been making all the decisions or many of the decisions, but you were in the room. You are vice president. So there's just limits to Kamala Harris is responsible for this crash of the stock market on the right. And there's limits to Joe Biden who? Who's Joe Biden? I've never even heard of the guy. So it's just wild to me how these two sides just continue to fudge the truth, if not outright lie, flip-flop, not tell the truth, not to be honest and open and transparent. But what do you expect? These are presidential candidates. I guess this is just the way that it works. It just makes me crazy. Like, I look at this and I go, why does this stuff bother me? And I think it's just, it's like, I value the truth. And I am a people pleaser, okay? I love to people please. I love to make people feel happy. I don't want them to be upset with me or anything else. Like, that impulse to puff myself up, to get attention for myself by bragging, to maybe change my mind in conversations. You say one thing to your Democrat friend and another thing to your Republican. Like, I understand all those impulses. Like, those are all in me because I'm a people pleaser. But the people in my life don't let me act that way. The people around you don't let you get away with that, or else you lose relationships, you lose jobs, you lose credibility. Like, it's just a fundamental piece of morality and ethics that you must be honest with people, and that you have to have some courage to tell the truth about what you believe. And if other people get upset with that, then that's on them, right? I mean, honesty is just such a core piece of integrity. And the four people running for president and vice president don't have this. Like, I haven't talked about the J.D. Vance stuff yet, but I will. I mean, going after Tim Walz, like, look, yes, Tim Walz misspoke and or lied about having, forget which term he used, but IVF. Yeah, he said he had IVF, and his wife said, we didn't have IVF, we had something like IUD, or, you know, I think artificial insemination. I haven't looked that deeply into it. And Walz is like really, or Vance is really pushing this as because it gets at the core of Tim Walz not being honest. But I don't think Vance understands how that comes across. Right? He seems fairly unempathetic, like the childless cat lady comment. It's just this idea that women in their 20s and 30s are out there not dating men, not having kids because they want to do Excel spreadsheets. That's how they think, right? But if you have any female friends that you love and you talk to them about dating men in their 20s and 30s, it's a joke. Like JD Vance has this concept of like, it's this psychology of like, I get to be however I want to be, and women aren't accepting of me. It's the nice guy syndrome from back when I was younger, right? The nice guy is actually somebody who's emotionally backwards and awful. Completely lacking in maturity, completely lacking in mental stability and emotional health. And nobody wants to date you because you're terrible. You don't ask for what you want. You're not honest. And you're a victim. You're a baby. And I see all those traits in everything that JD Vance says, right? It's not confidence. It's really emotional backwardsness. It's stupidity. It's victimhood. It's beta behavior. Right? Women aren't yes, there are women who choose not to have kids because they want to have a fulfilling career. I don't understand when people don't want to have a family, right? Okay? If you can have kids and you can have a monogamous marriage, I think you should. My life has been greatly enriched by that. But I also understand that fertility is incredibly personal and that some people can't have kids, and that's incredibly painful for them. And that 1 in 4 women have had a miscarriage, and they're usually married to a man who's experienced that. We had 5 miscarriages before we had Matthew. My wife was pregnant 6 times in the first year and a half of our marriage. And holding a baby in your hands that you just lost is incredibly personal. It's changed my view on so many things. But and like that 1 in 4 number, that's got to be higher, right? Because people don't talk about their miscarriages. When we were open about ours, the amount of DMs that my wife and I got saying, this happened to me, I've never told anybody, is just astounding to me. We want to share the joy of a child when we get pregnant, but then we don't want to have our friends and family share in the grief of the loss, and I don't understand that impulse. You have nothing to be ashamed of if you have a miscarriage. You should be open and honest about it and accept the healing from the community that loves you. That's my 2 cents. But the road to get to Matthew, between lifestyle changes, we did not do IVF. I don't fault anybody who does IVF. We just see the moral and ethical challenges in that and never wanted to go down that road. But this is an incredibly personal subject. And this guy just keeps punching that button. And I don't get it. Like you already have the press wanting to not like you. You already have the country wanting to not like you. So why are you helping? By hitting one of the most personal buttons that most couples experience and using it as a political punching bag. So, look, I will probably vote for Chase. I don't know a ton about Chase. I've met him once. I've had him on the show once. Chase Oliver, Libertarian Party presidential candidate. I know my beliefs are more in line with his than these 4. And I generally vote for third party for president because I want to make a statement. But I'm not really, enthused about it. Right? It just... I don't see political solutions to all this. Right? Who becomes president it matters. Obviously, you saw in 2020 how much it matters. Because people look to the president for their CDC guidance and we're going to make you get vaccines because Joe Biden says so. It matters because they're sending you checks and causing inflation. So it does matter who is president. But you can't control it. You don't have control over that in your life. What matters in your life are the 100 people that are going to come to your funeral. You're not called to make change in the presidential race or even congressional races or really probably politics at all. You should make informed votes. You should be informed about current events so you can respond to these events and people in love. And I think it is valuable, like this episode, to look at these characters, understand the events, and then try to adopt the lessons in your life of how to have more integrity, right? To the people that are in your circle. You're called to serve your circle of people that loves you, that cares for your family, your friends, your coworkers, your neighborhood, your community. That's what you can really do. And so I think if you're having stress, one of these people is going to be president. What's the solution? Get a better nominee. Okay. You're going to, look at the Republican Party. Mitt Romney, honorable guy by all accounts. We all still had the same angst about this. That's never going away. We're never going to look at a presidential candidate and go, this is the guy. Not anyone in this audience, anyways. I think if this were DC Dranos, you go, well, Donald Trump is a man of character. I love him. But I don't want you to have so much anxiety about how because the anxiety, in my opinion, is caused by, I can't fix it. I don't know what to do. What you can do is care for the people in your life in whatever ways you can help and serve them. You can build a better culture around you. You can first take these lessons and integrate them into your life. Radical honesty, a greater empathy for what others are going through when you start talking about political issues. Trying to understand your slate of what you believe about big issues, right? Like, where do I stand on immigration? Not where does my team stand on immigration, I'm going to mimic it, but where do I think this comes down? Really doing that inner work to understand your inner compass. That's what matters. Making yourself stronger, and then making your family, your immediate family stronger, then making your extended family stronger, then making your friend circle stronger, then making your neighborhood stronger, and responding to the needs in those sections. Like, okay, maybe your city, maybe, right? But I'm in Indianapolis. There's 2.5 million people in the metro region. There's 1 million people in my county. I can't reasonably make a huge impact immediately, maybe over 20 years, right? But that long-term impact really starts with me taking care of my spiritual life, my emotional life, my mental health, my physical health, my relationships, my financial health. And then when you build from that platform of strength, then you're able to help other people. That's, I think, the message of this show and what I'd like to get across to you. Yeah, a lot of what we've talked about today is distressing that these people are chasing after power. But there is something greater. There is something deeper to life than political power or financial wealth. Relational wealth is so important and so valuable. All right, I should probably wrap up. I love this audience. I love you guys. I just want the best for you. And I want the best for what... I love this country. I want what's best for this country. I don't feel we're getting it, but we're going to keep advocating for it. But for us to understand what's best for this country, we've got to understand it ourselves and do that work. So thank you so much for joining me. We're doing this every day over on Patreon. You can support the show, get a bunch of extra content. I appreciate all of you here in the free feed, but we'd love to have you over on Patreon and join that community and leave comments and talk with other listeners and join our Facebook group. There's a link in there. You'll find other people who listen to the show who kind of think like you do. And I feel like center-right libertarians who just want to respond to the world in love as opposed to what we're against. It's a little bit of a different sect. But we're gathering over in the We Are Libertarians group. You can join that in the comments. And with that, I say thank you. We will see you tomorrow.